Hello, people. We're back here with another episode of Monday Night Raw. Of course, this episode was light years better than whatever in the hell was Extreme Rules. I thought that was the worst pay-per-view of the year. I thought that was the most mediocre build of the year. It felt like it had nothing of substance, and the main event being the most minute factor of I don't know the big words I'm trying to use to call any terrible thing terrible. I should just call it terrible. This trash feud with Strowman and Bray Wyatt that bring any factor of viewers in when literally they had bigger build and excitement coming in on Raw. We had the main event of an extension match of the Big Show versus Randy Orton one-on-one. The Raw Tag Team Champions in action after not defending their titles in a few weeks. Rollins came and gloated over nearly ripping out the eye of Rey Mysterio, mocking his crappy little Party City bobbly eye with a string attached, thinking that this was a more blood feud than expected. With no source of Dominic coming out to defend his father, just Aleister Black to just come out of nowhere, kick the crap out of the jobber Murphy, and just have a match. Just have a borderline wrestling match. It didn't even end off DQ. Just came off a surprise curb stomp off what you suspect, off selling the arm, even though the major effect was the legs. Literally tried nullifying, doing vertical suplexes, Falcon arrows, Michinoku drivers, just countering any sorts of lifting maneuvers for Rollins to get the advantage. And it felt it was fine. And he was ruining the shoulder, even though that would still not do anything thanks to Black Mass still effective. Because to Rollins, the Black Mass won't be effective when I take out his arm. And it just, of course, we had those crappy scene punts. I already felt like there's no substance to Rollins being a heel other to bring any sort of fake captivity over his promos being menacing, even though he still sounds like Squilliam from SpongeBob. So the expectations of Rollins are already to the shadow of a doubt that he's a good wrestler, and that's it. I know this is a pseudo blood feud. I know they're trying to do this because, of course, there's contract disputes with Rey Mysterio, and it ended up with Murphy and Rollins coming around, damaging the Aleister Black using the commentary table cover to stomp on his arm, and that's about it. No Humberto Carrillo tonight. I don't know what's going on. They keep getting these guys from NXT that can't even speak a lick of English, have any promo time, or have any character. All they do is look good and do flips and kicks. So obviously they have more staying power than me shooting my shot. So that was literally the opening part of the show, and Rollins had nothing else to do other than to just bring up that he damaged Rey Mysterio's eye. The more important stuff came into a better segment with MVP Shelton Benjamin now joining the Hurt Business with Bobby Lashley, is showing their dominance over the real United States Champion MVP after a forfeit from uh, Apollo Crews last night at Extreme Rules because he wasn't cleared to compete over his physical. Cedric Alexander and Ricochet came to mock over MVP's career, that saying that he hasn't been relevant since 2006, even though he had the longest reign with the U.S. title the next year. But in the semblance of trying to do any sort of shot on a guy who put his finger up his ass, I guess that's something. And Mustafa Ali made his appearance on Raw, so I guess he was the third guy to be traded for AJ Styles. Then it came into an impromptu six-man tag. The match was fine. I thought it was given too much time, but the match was fine. Big fast pace, missile drop kicks, decent selling off the semblance of Ricochet getting tossed like a gefilte fish, but it's just not selling any factor when Ali just hits MVP with the 450 splash to end with the finish, and it just felt like I just remember trying to get some redemption over Ricochet and Cedric just losing all the time, and Ali coming on Raw. And I guess it's a good serving point, but how is that supposed to deal with MVP? They could have just had just a decent DQ finish and built up like Ali and the young guys being too much for the Hurt Business, and they could have just had this going on. I don't really care. And MVP and Shelton Benjamin just feels like there because he's to be that because he's black and he's old. So I guess there's some semblance of making another pseudo makeshift faction to the lack of a crowd and the lack of any roster power to use. I don't mind this faction, but it could have just been MVP and Lashley, and it could have been fine. There was decent selling off Shelton Benjamin. I didn't bring any moves up Shelton other did than some strikes and sold some Hurricane Ranas, some clotheslines, or whatever in the hell Cedric would do, other than sell right hands from Lashley. We also had the ball and elbow drop. The match was fine, but I felt like they could have just done a DQ finish, and no one really cares about 6-man tag matches. Christian puts his support for the Big Show, of course. They kept teasing over promos from early in the show with Randy Orton, early in the show with Christian, and later in the show with Big Show, going over all their histories. Like, I care. In my opinion, I do think it's okay to bring some semblance of history in relation to such a personal feud like a Big Show and Orton, but this could have been just built up fine on Extreme Rules, and they could have had the same thing because it was an unsanctioned match involving a personal feud involving friends of years ago, and that could have been decent build for already a lackluster pay-per-view with at least one or two good matches on the pay-per-view last night. So I thought that was bad. We also had Ruby Riott against Peyton Royce, and Ruby Riott picked up the win in weeks. We're not counting that tag team match that she had last week against the Iconics with Bianca Belair, because she won clean with Bianca Belair picking up the pin in the tag team match. So she comes up with Inzaguri, some little rain-making Inzaguri kick. Her crap selling. I don't even care about Ruby Riott like that. The match ended as quick as a Kelly match, and it brings no semblance of storylines except that Ruby is his jobber and she has no friends, and the Iconics were women tag team champions. I don't get this. I don't get this, folks. We also had the Street Profits against Andrade and Garza, and of course, Charlie Caruso obviously getting wet off whenever Garza was on his promo with Andrade guaranteeing their victory against the Street Profits, and so the Street Profits jumped him over the match. Isn't that kind of a heelish thing? It's not like there was anything personal that happened previously last week. They didn't even interrupt much, other than they just did a post-match assault on Eric and Ibar that they had a comedic angle with for the last month that went nowhere except one title defense. And they just ended up with a post-match assault with no other random rhyme or reason except that they're feuding, even though it's more the heelish thing for them to strike while they're looking the other way. That's not really babyface. The match was fine as it is. Street Profits. I thought there was some sloppily done spots over from Montez Ford. Best thing picked up off his right hands, tornado DDTs. Garza immediately just tossed his pants on Angelo Dawkins' face, off flying clotheslines off the hot tag. It just felt like Montez Ford wasn't there until the finish where he hit that giant frog splash. And Zelina Vega just comes off just reacting after calling them El Stupido after the match because they're Hispanic. Latina. It was a fine match. It was an entertaining match. Brings some semblance of hype, but you're just announcing a tag team that has barely had that much success. And it just feels a tiny bit underwhelming that they just lose clean against the tag teams without the Viking Raiders coming to assist them or something. off just some hits to the midsection, some cheap moves on Angelo Dawkins, and just stalling on forward. It just felt like a basic match. It felt like they weren't cheating or anything, or Zelina Vega usually doing her Hurricane Rana on the opponent to get the upper hand, and Bianca Belair could have been there or something, but that's dumb. I understand they're still fighting and stuff. They did come up later in the night to help with Randy Orton, but we had we had Bayley and Sasha gloat over winning the Raw Women's Championship and still and holding on the gold until Stephanie McMahon, Asuka, and Kairi Sane came with Stephanie McMahon, obviously in the Titantron, talking about that. Congrats on most women holding all the belts except Sasha did not win because Bayley's not an official referee, with the title being vacant. So why on the name side does it still say for Asuka that she's Raw Women's Champion? So the idiocy is still on the window for WWE. So that means the title should automatically go to Asuka, but then they plan next week to do another rematch for the Raw Women's title, involving who will be the true Women's Champion, even though the Women's title should still go to Asuka automatically because of an interference off Bayley. But who am I to issue the starter of the women's division, or a lack of one, in Stephanie McMahon? It transitioned into Kairi Sane against Bayley one-on-one. Bayley did win in a basic match. Just baseball slide, right hand, right hands. Corner spots, a bit of selling over off Bayley, trying to target the elbow to counteract the insane elbow, even though she still fights for the pin and hits a big one for a near fall. An elbow drop by Bayley for a near fall. Right hands, right roundhouse kicks off Kairi Sane. Big counters off roll ups until Kairi Sane came with a surprise 3 count off a surprise insane elbow. So Kairi Sane picks up the shocker win against the SmackDown Women's Champion. Yay. Sasha Banks did come up holding all the belts for some reason, even though you can just put them near the timekeeper. But heels, best friends, they hold each other's belts. This match was fine in the semblance of it just being there and Kairi Sane just being in and out in action. I don't know where Nia Jax or Lana and Natalya that's been trying to build up a mean streak or something. And where in the hell is Liv Morgan? I don't understand. It's just not building any factor or building up any source of a women's division. Next up, we had, of course, the McIntyre segment with Dolph Ziggler, and Ziggler still got treated as a whiny blonde bitch of jobber who continues to lose when it matters the most, with him still saying the same lines, I'm that close. I'm that close. And he immediately, after trying to hit a cheap shot on McIntyre, gets immediately headbutted and treated just like a lower mid-carder, just scratching and clawing his way to a big championship. And it would be so nice if only he hasn't done this for many of his feuds. He even did this when he was feuding against Kofi Kingston, a man who flings pancake and tosses cereal at children in the crowd. Held on to a title for over 200-something days. And still Ziggler couldn't even beat him. Even the freaking steel cage match. And then we have him doing the same thing for the Intercontinental Championship against The Miz. And over all this time, we are still believing in the factor of this feud, or at least giving any factor why Dolph Ziggler still having screen time. It's so dumb. And it's bringing up the factor, are you sure you don't want to see Lashley and McIntyre wrestle again? I mean, they didn't. Ziggler and McIntyre did not have a terrible match at Extreme Rules. Far from it. It was pretty much a match of the night in my standards. But it's really not telling much of a story. Thinks we know McIntyre isn't going to really take him seriously, and everybody explained that he beat him already last night. So he gets to pick his stipulation over the desperation of Dolph Ziggler, and he ends up Just saying the time and place, and he says in 2 weeks' time he will call the stipulation before the bell rings. So obviously McIntyre will call it on the fly like Ziggler did, and it didn't go under his favor. Obviously, this won't bite McIntyre. So I'm about to kill my voice, folks. The segment was dumb. It just ended up with Ziggler just looking like a desperate little midget. Well, obviously, the guy already done enough to make a career like 3 times. With him literally putting his career on the line for the freaking Intercontinental Championship. His dumb concussions with the World Heavyweight title and him twerking around with championships. And him still being on the roster after not even being a major selling point, a fan favorite, or anything to gain the product or give some semblance of veteran leadership. Like, Ziggler's just there to be there, and I just hate Ziggler. I hate him with a passion. Even anti-Smarks or Smarks hate Ziggler into the factor that he's a good wrestler. He's just why I only see on my TV screen, and it's just sad. We also had Orton against the Big Show in an unsanctioned match, one-on-one. No Ric Flair, shockingly. It would come, of course, with Garza and Andrade somehow. That said, after their talk with Zelina Vega, that they will be talking to. They will be trying to prove themselves to be more impactful in the show, with them even trying to help Orton get a better chance to punt Big Show's head off until the Viking Raiders came to intercept and stop them. Decent counter choke slams, decent size advantages, going over shoulder tackles until they try to target the leg off a drop kick, and it's literally just look back at their feud that they had 2013 for the WWE Championship, and then you just had this match. It just had an obvious table spot, and then 2 RKOs that were kicked out until Orton ended up another one when Big Show was staggering in the middle of the ring. Somehow Big Show never heard of using the KO punch anymore. And after the match, he got up and punt kicked him. We also had Shayna Baszler in the show, but she was barely even important, just scouting on the Bayley and Kairi Sane match, even though Bayley's on SmackDown. It just made no sense, and it just felt like Shayna Baszler. That I already heard she got stuff on talking to a fan saying that she's an ugly woman. That she is, but you don't say it out loud. Shit, what did I just do? This was a mediocre show, but in the kindness of my nothing, I will give it a 4 out of 10. Obviously better than Raw. I mean, Extreme Rules, even though in the factor of a pay-per-view, it's supposed to be the super card or at least the conclusion of storylines. But in the factor is they didn't do anything. They did like a YouTube level camera work, high production cinematic piece of garbage with barely any matches ending up in a clear finish with only 2 watchable matches. Extreme Rules, some people rated it at least a 3. Even Raw Culture couldn't even be that optimistic about it. It's poor. In my opinion, it was poor. And the fact that I didn't even give Extreme Rules a rating on my previous review. That's how bad I give it, and that's how bad I'll give it right now. I feel like Extreme Rules was terrible. And if you think differently, please comment down in the comments below. We'll love to hear your opinion to it, because obviously some people enjoy WWE for certain reasons. I feel like it damages the business, though, because of one specific taste, and it just ruins the branding side of it, bro. I mean, we had guys like Batista, Ryback, Wade Barrett, and stuff, and we just got that from Mustafa Ali, Buddy, and Murphy, and men that look like they couldn't even lift up my little nephews until they get a tiny bit tired. It just feels depressing. And, wow, we got AEW because of that. So, if you think differently, please comment down in the comment section below. That's it coming from the DST show. Please comment down how you feel about Monday Night Raw tonight. That's it coming from me. Thanks for watching.